All right. Today, we're going to be talking about embodiment and what it means to live an embodied life, which, that's no small thing, especially when there's been trauma in our lives. And so we're going to talk about what it means to embody trauma and live an embodied life when there's been trauma and all of the things, some of the things that people encounter when there's been trauma, like addiction, which, sounds like kind of a big important healing topic. And fortunately, I have Alison Rothman here with me today to help me talk about that. She's a body-centered wellness coach in Boulder, Colorado. Mm-hmm. But before I get to her, I'm Dr. J from the BioSoul Integration Center in Louisville, Colorado, and I help people embody their soul's gifts and their soul's essence through the hands-on work that I do, which I call BioSoul integration. And I also do online work with people using a technique called brain spotting. Mm. And so if you find this interesting, please subscribe to my channel on YouTube and do the social thing wherever you might find this, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Instagram. Pass it along to those who you think might find this information useful. I also will syndicate these episodes onto audio podcast, so you can find the BioSoul Integration podcast and this episode wherever you listen to your podcasts. I've also written a book, If It Didn't Hurt, How to Resolve Your Pain and Discover Your Life Purpose. So it's kind of the ultimate guide to embodying your pain's wisdom and integrating your soul's essence and your soul's gifts in your body so you can share those gifts on the planet. That book can be found on Amazon in all of the forms. And if you want to save $3 on the paperback, you can find that on my website at biosoulintegration.com. So check that out. But I think that's enough about me. I'm going to bring on Alison here in a second. She's a speaker. She runs retreats, which I think is she and I were talking earlier about how this video thing makes us a little nervous, but I think running retreats, that makes me nervous. But so she's a brave soul. She has the Embodied and Awake podcast. She's a body-centered holistic wellness coach in Boulder. She runs an acceptance circle for women. She's a mom, and she just comes from a wide and deep range of life and healing experience of her own, and touched a lot of hearts in her time in a very positive way, I'm sure. So I'm going to bring her on to chat with her. Hey, Alison.
Hi, that was such a sweet intro. Thank you.
Yeah, well, like I said, when we did your podcast, I feel the love when I'm having a conversation with you. So That's what happens to me.
Love it.
When I'm talking to you. I just wanted to start off, first of all, with just let people know where they can find you, how they can find you.
Well,
best way to do that.
Best way is obviously through my website, which is embodymylife.com. I'm also pretty active on Instagram at embody_life. And, I dip in and out of Facebook and LinkedIn and that other stuff. But my website is definitely the best way to connect.
Okay, great. So let's unpack some things here around this whole embodied word and embodied with trauma, etc. Like you said, embodiment is kind of a big part of your, like when I look at your website, there's that, I don't know whether you call it a mantra or kind of a command to embody life. I really like that. But so that seems like an important part of your work. So and it's a word that I think gets bandied about a lot, especially in the Boulder area there, probably. What does embodiment mean? What is that, Alison?
Well, yes,
big question. I know
it's a big question, but first of all, I just want to acknowledge that it is definitely become very overused and kind of thrown around as just kind of nonchalantly, like, yes, you must do your embodiment
Right.
practices and
Right.
embody. Da, 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 da. So to me, I mean, it is like foundational to
Mm.
who we are and how
Mm-hmm.
we move through the world.
Mm.
It is about coming into deep alignment with the truth of who we are, with
Mm-hmm.
how we speak, how we
Mm-hmm.
work, how we mother, how we father, how we
Mm.
engage with our community,
Mm-hmm.
how we, there's no gaps between who we are and our embodiment. And
Mm.
so, yeah, I mean, naming my business came to me after, decades of exploration. And it was just so crystal clear of we have to embody our lives because life just does what it does.
Mm.
And we can't, we can certainly separate ourselves from the flow of it and disconnect. And that's all, a subject I know we're going to get into. But the more we can drop into ourselves, and yes, it's about getting into our bodies, but it's so much more than that.
Mm.
And I think that that's where the misperception is
Mm.
around embodiment. I mean, somebody who has no, feeling in their physical body can
Mm.
still be embodied
Mm.
because they are
Mm.
deeply connected to themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the physical is important, absolutely. But, people are like, oh, but I'm in physical pain all the time, and which is your specialty, or, I have this injury. So how can I be connected to myself when I'm just so disjointed in
Mm-hmm.
so many other ways? So that's why it's such a deep internal experience. And to me, it really is birthed from building the capacity to sit with ourselves and to be with ourselves in all terrains of life. And to me, it's learning how to sit in meditation
Mm.
diligently,
Mm-hmm.
consistently, because to me the meditation practice bridges the gap between who we are and how we move through life. So it brings us right into that place of center.
Mm-hmm. So
So
like I don't know, I guess we experience the world through these physical bodies. So I guess meditation is kind of a tool to track our
mhm,
experience.
mhm.
Uh,
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I have a whole spiel about meditation,
mm-hmm.
that, it really is the platform for our, to learn how to sit with ourselves in all flavors of life,
Mm-hmm.
and coming from a background, eating disorder, addiction,
Mm-hmm.
high trauma, my meditation practice has been my anchor, and so
Mm-hmm.
that's why no matter what you have going on in your world,
Mm-hmm.
the way in is through learning how to sit with ourselves, and that is embodiment.
Mm-hmm.
So
So the way in is through what's happening in the moment, what we're
and
feeling, even if it's not comfortable.
especially if it's not
Yeah.
comfortable, learning how to breathe deep down into our bellies, which was a huge turning
Mm,
point for me in my
mm,
addiction recovery, because I literally just couldn't sit
mm,
with the sensations that would come up. And
mm,
that's why it's practice. I think there's this misperception around meditation that
mm.
we're going to sit and we're going to be like, oh, everything lift
Right,
out and
right,
wonderful and lovely. I'm like, no, you
right.
sit and all your shit comes up because
Mm-hmm,
you stopped moving. We're just
mm-hmm,
in a culture of distraction. So
mm-hmm,
when you sit and you commit, you set your timer. I'm
mm-hmm,
not getting up until that timer goes off,
mm-hmm,
everything starts swirling. So we gain the capacity to sit in the discomfort of life, which then translates
mm-hmm.
out into the world.
I was going to say, what about when you can't, when you can't be sitting, or you can't,
Right.
when we meditate, usually you probably, we sit in a quiet space and
Mhm.
try to get rid of distractions and things like that. But what happens when we
Yeah.
can't do that, when life happens?
Right. Well, and that's the whole thing. I mean, and that's
Uh-huh.
really the premise of my business is like,
Mm-hmm.
how can we build this inner resource and build these deep muscles within, so that, in our meditation practice, so that when we step out into the world, which I meditate at 5:30 in the morning. Yeah, there's nobody coming at me then. But the second my son is awake, the second I check my email, it's like, then I have to put my practice into action. So it's like, okay, we remember, I know how to sit with my breath. I know how to sit with myself. So I'm going to focus on my breath as I'm moving through. A difficult situation comes up, I've got that access point, right? So it translates. That's the whole purpose, unless you're a monk living like on a mountaintop,
right.
like life happens. We've all got that memo the last couple of years, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, even monks, they I guess in the purpose, it's like you meditate, you sit in a quiet space, and you sort of try to master that, and then you try to do that while you're raking the garden, or while you're taking out the trash, or while you're washing the dishes, or whatever. So trying to take that into life,
right?
And again, I think that could be, especially when there's been trauma in our life. Trauma makes that hard, or could make that more of a challenge. But I think, like, I don't know, I grew up in the Midwest, and I had lots of love to go around, like no abuse. Sure, there, looking back, I realized there was kind of a messed up relationship with work, and with, I don't know, maybe religion kind of left a mark, and things like that. But there was lots of love. I didn't I guess what constitutes trauma? People think of, I don't know, car accidents and abuse and the big obvious things, but can they be less obvious things? What constitutes trauma?
First of all, where in the Midwest did you grow up?
I grew up in Nebraska.
Oh, you really grew up in the Midwest.
I was I grew up on a farm in Nebraska.
Oh, okay.
So
I grew up in the Midwest too, but not.
And where was that?
Cincinnati. And I went to
Ohio
on the basketball. So
yeah. The only thing in Nebraska, the big thing in Nebraska, is the Huskers. That's all they have.
I know. Yeah. Anyhow, that was a total aside.
Yeah, I wasn't a big sports fan, so
okay,
I had to find other things to do.
Gotcha. So yeah, in the therapy world, they label it as big T and little t, so it's like the small traumas, and then the bigger ones of abuse, near death, car accidents, etc. But every day we kind of have these little trauma, somebody cuts you off on the road, or you have a really hard conversation, and somebody says something to you that really gets under your skin, and you have a hard time letting go of that, and or your child gets in something, or whatever it is. It's really anything that imprints your system, right?
Yeah, right.
But obviously we have to approach the big T and the little t in different ways. But there also are very parallel tools to be using, right? And so we can practice these. Like, give thanks that, you never have a big T, but unfortunately, a lot of humans have, or will in their lifetime. So it's about learning how to, work with these little T, situations in a way that doesn't blow your system out, doesn't, get into your cells and to imprint you, so that you are moving from a place of post-traumatic stress, right? And then, if you happen to encounter a bigger traumatic experience, you're like, oh, I've got these tools that I can pull into this, larger experience. And, I can share with you if this is the right moment.
Sure. Yeah.
Talk about, just about a near-death experience that I had
a
couple of years ago. And, this had come after a consecutive series, if I may say, this kind of bookend to several big T experience, traumatic experiences. And I was traveling in Mexico alone, which I've done gazillions of times. And I don't know if we've even talked about this.
Actually, I think I heard you talk about this on another podcast, but
Okay. Yeah.
I don't think we've talked about it.
Yeah, there was just so much wisdom that happened, and so many gems of like remembering that these tools, these practices actually really work, and they really serve in moments when you need them, if you need them, right? So, I don't need to get into the details, but middle of the day, a gunshot goes off, and broad daylight.
Oh my gosh.
A bomb had gone off,
Did you know it was a gunshot?
I did not know it was a gunshot. I literally thought it was a bomb because it was that loud,
Wow.
Yeah, that was clear.
It must have been close by.
It was very, very close by, from a place that I had just come from an hour prior. So, and it was at that time when there were all these mass shootings happening. Like they're happening a lot.
Right.
But, anyhow, I had this moment, and then, just watching the activity of all the people running, and of like, well, first of all, I was like, there's no way this can be happening. Like this stuff, the stuff
so surreal. Yeah.
So surreal. This is stuff you hear about on the news, and it happens to other people, but this can't be happening to me. I'm from the Boulder bubble.
Right.
So, but in that moment, I was able to drop into my breath and to my body. I was like, oh, this is why I've been meditating all these years.
Did you consciously do that, or did it kind of happen from your practice?
It happened from practice, and, it didn't take, like, in that moment, I was like, oh, thank God I'm a meditator. It was just, I came just right inside.
Yeah. Right.
Inside. I knew what to do. I knew, I didn't panic. I was so grounded and so present. And, what happened after that, I was stuck under a bed by some Mexican. It was a mess, but
you went and hid.
What's that?
You went and hid.
I hid. It was a hit by the Mexican drug cartel.
Gosh.
So, the first gunshot went off, and then there were subsequent 4 other shots. Gosh. And so I literally did not know if I was going to live or die. I mean, I, as I was laying on this, the floor of this hotel under this bed, listening to these gunshots go off, I actually felt super peaceful. I felt super connected and grounded. And, you hear people saying that, like, with near-death experiences, that they have this moment of, like, there's no worries.
Right.
It's just what's happening. I was in total trust, complete faith. But, the point of, and there's so many steps that happened after, and that I was the only American. I was the only tourist around. I ended up walking around and putting my hands on all these traumatized Mexicans who this is their everyday reality. They were crying to me, sharing their stories. I was like, oh, I know I was sent there, as kind of a light worker, as cheesy as that may sound. But the point is that I really got the memo loud and clear that these practices help. They support us. And dragging myself to the cushion at 5:30 every morning for years upon years, it actually does serve in the grand scheme of life. So that was a long tangent too. I don't know what your question was, but
no, that's all right. It's kind of like lifting weights or something. It's like working out in the gym, like you strengthen your muscles. And I don't know if you needed to, lift a car off of someone in an emergency, you could. Here came this emergency, and all this work that you had done. It just makes me, it kind of brings me chills when you talk about that. It's just amazing how those moments of, like, it consolidates our attention. And that's what happens when we bring our attention so intensely on something, we penetrate some veil, because I've had experiences like that myself. And that makes me, makes me think like, so it's possible, people like hearing this might think, well, I've experienced some nasty things, abuse or whatever. Like, is it even possible for me to heal this? Is it possible for me to embody this? It's so unbearable.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's possible.
I mean, yes, 100%. And, what happens in our lives, and like I said, I had a house fire. I, came through a really abusive marriage, stuff, like just ugly. And what I know to be true is that we have our stories. We all have experiences that we've gone through, but they don't need to dictate who we are. That'll always be a part of me. It imprinted who I've become as a.
I mean, you never get rid of it. You never clear it.
I think there's different schools of thought with that. I've had gazillions of energy clearing, gazillions, but does it run the show?
Right.
Any of it? No, absolutely not. There's different therapies to work with, but to me, I'm all about simple.
Sure.
I'm like, how can I keep this energy circulating through my system? How can I, get into my body and allow space of new possibility?
So when it gets stuck and we start to focus on that, it's when it gets stuck, and that becomes our reality then.
Exactly. And there's other, I write a ton. Writing is really cathartic for me. It does demand a lot of personal work and a lot of attention to it, to not get into a state of PTSD, to make sure it doesn't embed in your tissues and cells and cause a whole host of other issues, right?
Right. Well, I think that's why, it's demanding our attention. And when we don't give it the attention it needs, then it might manifest itself in all sorts of ways that will draw our attention one way or the other. They'll get us to stop and pay attention.
Absolutely.
Whether that's illness or emotional issues or whatever.
Absolutely. Anytime we avoid anything really that needs our attention, we are setting ourselves up for addiction, for illness, for, some dysfunction in our lives. So I have clients who really struggle with digesting the trauma in their life, and they are subsequent addicts. I get it. I went down the road of addiction for a long time too, because numbing feels easier to them than actually sitting with what's coming up. But I promise that with support, absolutely, we need support. But if you can diligently show up for yourself and learn how to sit with this heavy emotion, this feeling, sensation, it will shift. But if you numb and you stop and you avoid and you distract, it's just going to keep coming in, or at least keep trying to come in.
And the work that I do at my office, when people are, they come to a point where things kind of like coming to a head, there's, emotion arising. And I always coach people to just like commit to giving that permission to be there. And the same thing always happens. If you can give enough attention to things when they arise, we always come out the other. If we give it enough kind attention, we always come out the other side.
Always. I love that you brought that in, because, I think, and I get it,
there might be more waves and other waves of that.
100%. It's not just a one and done by any means. But, I think people, they feel like they're going to die if they're
going to get lost in this forever.
Around it. But if you can allow and give permission, and it comes in waves, that's why you build the tools and you do the practices, so you can meet these waves with yourself, embodied and whole and aligned.
And why we get help. We need help to have someone show us who can bridge that gap for us.
Exactly. That's
what we're all here for. We're here to help each other.
I know. I love it.
You mentioned addiction before. I'll ask some questions about that, but I was wondering, like, it makes me think of, what about trauma do we have to remember it?
Mm.
You know, I think of things that happened when we were too young to remember, or what about things that happen like familial stuff? Does that
Yeah.
count?
I mean, of course it counts because it's in our bodies, it's in our
Mm-hmm.
cells, it's in our being. I am not a believer
Mm,
in rehashing the past.
mm,
And, I mean, I do,
mm,
there's a time and a place to go back into the childhood,
mm-hmm,
kind of do your own healing
mm,
work on it. But I struggle with, practitioners who are constantly taking their
mm,
clients back into the
mm,
gunk and
mm,
kind of making them kind of like,
mm-hmm,
like I think that, yeah, we can go back in and we can just honor and acknowledge
mm-hmm,
I mean, this is to say that, I didn't have significant trauma as a kid. I worked with
mm,
clients who did, and
mm-hmm,
so we dip in and out,
mm-hmm,
because if we go too far in and we just,
mm-hmm,
they're not functioning in their lives now, right?
mm-hmm,
So how can
right,
you bring that into the present moment and work with
mm,
that trauma,
right,
now,
yeah,
currently, without dwelling in the
sure,
past. But anything that's happened, even in the, utero, it's
mm-hmm,
all part of us.
mm,
But I feel like we have choice as to how we meet, if we want to live and
mm-hmm,
reside in this past stuff, or if we want to choose to
mm-hmm,
turn, towards
right,
our current selves,
right,
adult selves.
yeah. Seems
Yeah.
like you know, I think about like cognitive psychotherapy. You can like know all the reasons academically why I do this, why I have this issue because of my parents and because of how they treated me or whatever. Um, and kind of, yeah, that doesn't mean that doesn't solve the problem. Like this stuff is it's still part of our cells.
Mm-hmm.
It's in our
Mm-hmm.
cells. So that sort of embodied piece, the solution is kind of in the present moment. Sounds
Yep.
like you're saying you kind of like there's enough in the present moment
Yeah.
to to there's enough that gets brought up in the present moment to
Absolutely.
work with.
I just don't think, and my work is very body centered,
Mm-hmm.
holistic. Like I try to avoid too much talking from up here. Yeah, I'll
Mm-hmm.
share. But I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you can spend your whole life being pissed off at your parents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What is that going to do?
Yeah.
How is that going to solve anything? There just comes a point in time when
Mm-hmm.
we have to take personal responsibility, and recognize that we can shift this pattern.
Mm-hmm.
From deep within us. It doesn't matter what anybody else is doing, it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter what anybody else has done to us, said
Mm-hmm.
to us, or etc. But we can empower ourselves
Mm-hmm.
through this work, and
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't mean we're avoiding or
Mm-hmm.
bypassing at all,
Right.
but
So in
it's
that case, like, sorry.
no,
So
no,
in that
please.
case, like embodying that you're pissed off at your parents. I mean, what does that look like? Is that like feeling the anger? Uh, what does it look
Yeah,
like?
yeah. I mean, I think it's it's feeling what you need to feel,
Mm-hmm.
finding compassion,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, especially like I'm in my late 40s,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how long can you dwell on
Mm-hmm.
what happened when you were in high school or whatever
Right.
it is, compassion,
Mm-hmm.
empathy, compassion for, whoever. And I'm not saying I have issues with my parents. I just want to be clear.
You
If they're
probably do. You're human.
I mean, but it just gets to this point of like, how long can you blame other people for your issues,
Mm-hmm.
for your traumas,
Yeah.
the dramas of
Mm-hmm.
human existence? I know I'm always
Mm-hmm.
like, all of our kids are going to be in therapy, no matter how evolved we are
Mm-hmm.
as
Right.
conscious humans, we're totally imperfect, right?
Right.
So yeah, it is about learning. I am all about feel your feelings, feel it to heal,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because if you don't, then it gets suppressed and squashed down into your body. Yeah.
Right. Does that
Yeah.
mean like having a felt sense of it in your body? What does that mean to like feel your feelings?
Well, I think it comes out in a lot of ways.
Okay.
I personally have done, and do a ton of work using movement to release.
Okay.
Sometimes it's out of the voice,
Sure. Like some people are lead from a different, some people are kinesthetic, some people are visual, some people are feeling sense,
Exactly.
right.
But what I know is that just talking about it doesn't
Yeah.
only get you so far.
Stay in our heads there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where I feel like talk therapy, you only get so far because us kind of recapitulating. So yeah, you're angry. Okay, where do you feel it? Oh, I feel it in my throat. What do you do to shift that? And maybe it's right, maybe it's, go outside and scream. Maybe it's hit a pillow. Like, how do you express emotion in a healthy way that doesn't come out sideways and all these,
I was going to say, like, what does this, so you started giving me an idea there, like what a session might kind of like look like. How does that unfold? How might that look? You kind of mentioned a little bit there.
Yeah, well, I mean, everybody's different. So,
that's true.
In general, I always say I've got gazillions of tools in my toolbox. So, like whatever is presented, and different people are their comfort levels are really different. Like a lot of movement to some people is like they shut down.
Right.
They're like, I can't do that, So, always talk some for sure. But I'm constantly interjecting and asking them to, what's going on in your body? Can you track the sensations? Where things are moving? Sometimes we get on the floor, because the earth is very supportive for allowing the nervous system to drop. So that's their comfort level, and that's where they can have the emotional release. I do hands-on stuff, but my main focus, movement, obviously, sometimes mirror work, etc. But my main focus is keeping people as present as possible as these things surface, as the emotion comes up, as the memories, like deep trauma that they're just remembering, as the memories surface, come into your body. Where are you feeling that? Sometimes people start shaking. They gotta shake out of their limbs, out of their their bodies. Sometimes getting into child's pose is the most supportive thing, with my hands on them and guiding them. So trauma can be so disconnecting, and it's so disembodying. Anytime you've had an invasion to your system, you naturally exit, you naturally want to. So this work is so much about getting back into the body, getting back into the regulating the nervous system, learning how to cycle emotions through without drowning in them. So I really aim to give people tools so that when they're not in session and stuff comes up, they have those tools to work with. So that's
it sounds just like giving them sort of permission to be how they are. I suppose a lot of the problem happens that we think, I shouldn't be feeling this, or and you're just giving them permission to sort of feel however it is that they feel. I think there's some relief in that, and things maybe start to unfold. There's some wisdom in that, and it unfolds.
And giving them again these tools, and giving them the opportunity to explore their emotional repertoire, because I think I work with a lot of women, and unfortunately, a lot of women are very suppressed emotionally, and so the emotion feels too big for them to connect with other environment. So I am seek to provide this safe space for them to be however they need to be, as big as the emotion is.
Sure. Cool. Yeah, I love that. Definitely. I'm becoming aware of time. I have a 7.5-year-old daughter. I become aware of times when, I'm trying to like, hey, you're too much. And I catch those moments. Don't want to instill that in her. She'll end up at the therapy. She'll end up in a therapy later on down the road.
Yep. We do the best we can,
Right. So addiction, that was the other piece.
Mhm.
How does addiction play into all this?
Well, addiction's a distraction and it's a way
Mm,
of numbing, and so when things feel too big and scary and I developed eating disorder when I was 7.
mm,
Um, and, it became my coping mechanism for navigating the world,
mm-hmm,
and, I did have some sexual trauma when
mm,
I
mm,
was about 12-ish,
mm,
um,
gosh.
that I had totally suppressed for,
Mm,
I didn't remember until I was in my early 20s.
that sounds so like such a common thing.
It is
Again,
very,
I'm afraid for
very
my daughter a little
yeah.
bit.
Yeah, well, and I'm raising a boy, and I mean, I feel like it's
Mm,
a huge responsibility to have
mm-hmm,
these potent conversations,
mm-hmm,
about what's appropriate,
yeah.
with women. But anyhow, addiction becomes the way of coping with any discomfort of life.
Mm,
I mean, and that goes with big T and little t.
mm-hmm,
Um, so I have clients who don't even necessarily recognize that they're
mm,
addicted to something, because it can
mm.
be as like benign as I'm addicted to social media.
I was going to
And
say, there's like, you think of addiction, like, again, people might think, well, I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not doing substance abuse, or I don't have a gambling problem or sex addiction or whatever. But there are other, I imagine, little a
yeah.
addictions.
Let's go with that. Yeah, I mean, it's anything that's distracting you from the present
Mm,
moment. It can be
hmm,
your phone, it can
mm.
be
Anything
um,
that's distracting you from the present moment,
it
that's
is.
an
I mean,
addiction,
really. It and nobody's perfect, I mean,
right?
we all have them. Busyness is an addiction.
Mm-hmm.
Avoiding dropping in to I mean, how many people say, I'm so busy.
Right,
Okay,
right.
we're all busy.
I gotta get my list. I gotta do all the things on my list.
Yeah, and that's okay. I mean, social media, checking email, texting with people, shopping,
Mm-hmm.
coffee. I mean,
Mm.
really, it's
Lots
like,
of, yeah, I mean, even meditation could be we could use that to distract any of the things that we would otherwise be good things, working out or work
right,
or
right. Yeah, I mean,
sex
spiritual
or
practice
yeah,
can be, yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely.
right,
Sex is definitely an addiction, but
right.
spiritual practice can be people who
Mm-hmm.
dive so full bore into something that
Mm-hmm.
they're not dealing with
Mm-hmm.
their lives, the
Mm-hmm.
experiences. So it's, yeah, I mean, there's big addictions such as drugs and
Mm-hmm.
alcohol, et cetera. But I think it's really important to recognize our human tendencies
Mm-hmm.
towards these addictive ways, and
Mm-hmm.
how maybe we're avoiding something, how they're serving us,
Mm-hmm.
why, what am I avoiding? What am I not quite dealing with in my
Mm-hmm.
life? And I I can't help. I analyze everything. I love to dig in. I'm a
Sure.
Scorpio. Like I just so for me, it's about finding
Mm-hmm.
balance of
Mm-hmm.
finding lightness and fun, and rather
Mm-hmm.
than always like analyzing the human way,
Right.
so, and that's kind of an addiction too, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
An obsession.
And it's I'm like, it's a pretty healthy obsession,
Mm-hmm.
because I genuinely have so much passion for
Yeah.
supporting humanity,
Right. You use the
that
knowledge gained there to help people. So yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
So that kind of like connects trauma and addiction. I guess it's something that we use, addiction generally something that we use to, avoid, to distract ourselves. So,
Mhm.
I mean, again, like how does the embodiment piece play in there? I guess, how does embodiment sort of
Mhm.
solve that problem or help
That's
addiction, or
interesting.
what can one expect, I guess, as far as addictions go, and the possibility for healing that through embodiment.
Well, again, embodiment is learning how to be with ourselves
Mm,
in any
mm-hmm,
terrain, any flavor of life. And, I do want to say that also sometimes addictions play out not when we're feeling uncomfortable, but when we're really feeling great. I had a client just talk about how she went and did this beautiful ceremony and was so open and happy and joyful. And the first thing she wanted was a beer, And so like, what's that about? And then we're too scared to feel good too, So to me, the embodiment just kind of bridges the gap of all of it. It's like a home base, and I have a 25-year yoga practice too. So I'm kind of coming in from that realm. But, how can we feel peace in ourselves from deep within, no matter what is going on around us? And that's even when, I always say the food addiction is the hardest addiction to overcome because you have to eat, right? You can't eat, right?
I never thought of that. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So it's like, how can we learn how to also be so compassionate with ourselves when perhaps we go eat the bag of cookies and so how can we
not start kicking your butt, beating yourself up,
right? I mean, it's this constant dialogue and relationship with ourselves to bring us into alignment, embodied alignment with the truth of who we are. And the truth of who we are imperfect humans.
Right.
So we're going to fuck up, we're going to do things that are not necessarily in alignment, but how can, in our relationships, my God, like in our parenting, all of it, but how can we bring it together, and come into center? And so that goes with addictions. If you're really becoming aware, oh my gosh, I have all these addictive patterns. It's really
awareness sounds like a big piece because you've got to be aware of all of those parts of ourselves that
self-awareness, self-reflection, and that is key to coming back into center. You forget to remember. I always say that, we forget to remember. You say something, we're like, I thought I like was a little more evolved than that, to our, as I'm like yelling at my son, trying to get out the door. I'm like, could you just tone it down a little bit here, but, we do the best we can. And then we come back home and we drop back in. But doing these embodiment practices, be it meditation, be it movement, I consider writing an embodiment practice, really anything that brings in a deeper sense of awareness who we are, that just becomes our anchor, that becomes our focal point, and we can strive to move from that place, in all of the flavors of our crazy human life. Yeah.
It's a challenge, it sounds like, but a worthwhile challenge.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so. What's the alternative, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Right.
Yeah.
Might as well make the best of it. Sounds like it's part of making the best of what we have here. Yeah. Well, I think that feels good to me. I got a lot of great nuggets there from you. Is there anything else that you feel like we didn't talk about that feels important that you want to mention? I have a question. What would be good people? I don't know, who are people who would sort of like hit the ground running with you, who would, I don't want to use the word ideal client, but who are the people who would just sort of really hit the ground running and appreciate, land with you?
Good question.
That you guys could take off and run together.
Yes. Like I said, I primarily do work with women at this.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm not opposed to working with men, but that's just kind of what I feel like my forte is.
Passion.
I work with, it seems as though women in midlife, a lot of women in midlife, and interestingly, I've been drawing in a lot of women, young women in their early 20s, who are really, kind of struggling to find themselves. And I think, It's like something happens in your early 20s that also happens in midlife. It's
Right.
this kind of reinvention.
Cycles.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. So women in transition, women who have lost connection of themselves to themselves, be it they're in midlife and their relationships have fallen apart and they're trying to figure find who they are.
Trying to find themselves again. Yeah.
Exactly. Obviously addiction. I work a lot with addiction, a lot with trauma. And a lot of these women sadly have had a lot of trauma in their lives, in their childhoods through teenage years. So, the thing I would say is that my work is not a quick fix. It is not, okay, I'm going to sign up for 2 sessions and I'm going to feel better. You can tear the Band-Aid off and all is well. Like really the people who do, I don't even like using the word success, but the people who get the most out of working with me are those who really commit. I have some who have been working with me for a year, some 3 years, some 6 months. They really understand and they're willing to do the work of our sessions. So the work is so powerful. It's so meaningful, so deep, so transformative.
Sounds like it. Yeah.
But you have to be willing to show up and to really do it.
I was saying, so it's not something that you do for them.
No.
At all. I mean, this is, they're doing the work.
I always call myself, I'm a guide. I can offer tools, I can offer wisdom that I've gleaned over the years. I can be of tremendous support, but I can't do the work for them.
Right. I mean, that's always the way it is. We can have help, I guess, or a guide, but inevitably we have to do the work ourselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think the other piece that I was going to add in is the importance of community and reflection. I'm really into group process, and that's why I run these retreats and consistent women's groups, that we don't need to do it alone, and that our healing is enhanced when we are in a supportive community, because we can get so many mirrors and reflections and really feel like, oh, there's nothing really wrong with me here. Like they have something going on too, that's like same but different, same flavor but just a little bit different. And I have had tremendous success and it's always life changing when we come together and are able to be real and vulnerable and share. So the community piece is huge in the book too.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of us do a lot of, when we're isolated or by ourselves, we do a lot of comparing to others, and you don't realize like, oh, this person I'm passing on the street is going through something really, maybe worse than my problem, or really intense, or, so yeah, community seems like a big,
huge.
Yeah.
Huge, and we were in isolation for 2 years, essentially. So, I started running a women's group on Zoom, and I was so resistant to it, but it's been incredible. Like some of the women are still in it after, in 15 months later, because it's been such an anchor for them. And, and there's this piece around accountability, people can be accountable to me as their practitioner, but when you're a part of a community, it's a whole other realm.
Right.
So,
yeah. Great. Well, I think that's amazing. Alison, thanks for sharing your heart and your passion with me here, with us, whoever ends up watching this. And can you mention again how people can find you, get a hold of you? And also, I saw on Facebook, maybe you have an upcoming something or other.
You do.
So you should mention that.
I will. Thank you for doing your research. Well, thank you so much for having me too.
Yeah. My pleasure.
So my website again is embodymylife.com. And I do have a super awesome women's retreat coming up in July at Joyful Journey Hot Springs, which is in the San Luis Valley here in Colorado. It's absolutely gorgeous. 365-degree views all around, and The last one I did was summer solstice of 2019, and who knew it was going to take this long back, but doing it. And so it's a combination of gentle embodied yoga, dance, and movement, meditation, women's circles, ritual, ceremony. I'm bringing one of my dear friends who's an incredible chef, holistic chef, organic food, hot springs, nature. It's just going to be a beautiful experience. That's happening towards the end of July, and registration is live on my website.
Okay, great. Yeah, that sounds nurturing and amazing.
Want to come?
That's a women's retreat, isn't it? I don't think I could pull it off.
No, I don't think so either.
I have to cut. I have to maybe get rid of the beard.
Yeah, you'd have to do something.
Yeah. All right, Alison. Well, thanks for chatting with me.
Thank you.
So appreciate it. And everyone listening, yeah, check out Alison Rothman at embodilife.com.
Embodymylife.
Embodymylife.com. Okay.
Yes.
Great. And everyone else who might see this, again, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, like it, share it with anyone who might be interested or found this information useful. Check out my book at biosoulintegration.com. And thanks for listening. And I look forward to helping you express more life. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.